Kharagpur, every year when I visit India, my native home is in Midnapur, actually, in a village. And then it's about half an hour journey from my native home to IIT Kharagpur. Every time, without any mistake, I do visit IIT Kharagpur, meet students and faculty members. So that's a great pleasure. Definitely, anytime I get a request like this becomes very important for me. I try to meet that request, and that's exactly what has happened. Thanks to Deborshi and Rajavshi, who is probably acting behind it, for all the support and for the kind invitation. And thanks to everyone for joining. I'll try to make this talk informal, which means that if you have any question, please feel free to stop me anytime. This is not a typical lecture. This is supposed to be an interaction with you. And that's what I like, because it's done via virtual setup. I cannot really ask you questions or interact with that much. But typically what I do, I ask you questions and you give your comments or any input while we go along. So the topic, as you can see, is pretty broad. It's innovation in Internet of Things for solving global problems. Now, innovation is broad, global is broad, IoT itself is broad. We'll try to focus on some key applications which we are looking at the Nelms Institute for the Connected World. That's an institute in the University of Florida. And we'll refer to this institute a lot as we go along. And in this institute, where I'm serving as director for last 2 years or so, we focus on developing IoT technology as well as enabling applications of this technology in solving some of the really critical problems the world is facing today. And the premise of that is what I tell everybody, that if you have smart connected systems, which is IoT, and I'll talk about that, then that can really drive significant change in the world, and that can really solve many crucial problems we are facing. So I'll give you some examples, and hopefully at the end, I'll be able to stimulate your interest and critical thinking in this very important field. Before we go along, let me quickly introduce the institute which I'm leading here at University of Florida. There is a website for that. The institute is targeted towards developing IoT technology and IoT applications. And the assumption on which it builds is that IoT, as people appreciate and think that's correct, that will drive the fourth industrial revolution, and at the same time it will be also guiding the fifth industrial revolution. So it's really powerful in terms of what it can do. And that's why the university, as well as two generous donors, one of them is David Nelms, former chairman and CEO of Discover Credit, and Sachio Semmoto, who is CEO of e-Access and e-Mobile in Japan, a billionaire in Japan. They donated money towards establishing this institute. Thanks for the generous donation. David Nelms, who does visit in our university, and I have the opportunity to meet him many times. Sachio also visits our university many times, and I have met him also several times. Great individuals. They are alumnus of our department, of our university. So David donated money in memory of his late father, Warren B. Nelms. Warren was an IoT pioneer. He, about 30 years ago or 40 years ago, he developed first instance of smart home by using discrete transistors and mechanical relays. So he definitely created some pioneering work and instances of how IoT can be used in making things smart. And I'll talk about that in terms of the smartness aspect. We are looking for collaborators from academia, industry, and government. We have a lot of collaborators already. But if you'd like to collaborate with us, we'll be definitely happy and looking forward to that. So we are, of course, internationally connected. We have a lot of collaborators in different countries, including in IIT Kharagpur, but we are looking for more. So if you think about the overall focus of this talk is IoT for solving global problems, and I'll give you some instances, not all, because that will take probably a whole day if I want to talk about everything. And if I want to do justice on everything, it will take a long time. But within 1 hour, I have packed some of the critical solutions we have been developing for solving global problems in our institute. And the goal is that these problems, if you can solve them effectively, they can lead to a safe, secure, and sustainable future. That's the goal. And with that goal in mind, the institute, which has about 47 faculty members and about 100 students at this point, the institute is looking at developing two things. We call it two verticals. One vertical is looking at developing core technology for IoT. There are a lot to do, improving energy efficiency, for example, improving smartness and configurability. And of course, if you have IoT, you need to make it secure and safe. For example, if you have an autonomous vehicle, if that's not secure or safe, then that can lead to serious problems, right? Similarly, there is another vertical we are looking at. It's called novel applications. And in this vertical, we are taking the IoT technology we are developing and then using the technology to enable new applications in the area of healthcare, consumer electronics, and critical infrastructure. I'll give you an example for at least two of them, and you'll see how the technology can enable the application areas. Particularly, it can enable new applications which people have not thought about in the past. So I'll give you examples for that. And as I said, the primary goal for giving that example is to motivate you to think about how smart connected systems, which we call IoT, can be used to solve new problems which people have not thought about in the past. And I can give you more and more examples if you like. There are a lot of things we are trying to do with smart connected systems. The starting point for us is that it can do a lot of things. It's very capable. So let's see if we take a problem and then if that problem can be solved in part or in its entirety by having smart connected devices. So we have a lot of collaborators. This is just a sampling of who is working on what. There are also significant, impactful publications from the Institute. For example, this was the cover story I can see on the top in IEEE Consumer Electronics magazine on something called Eat But Verify. So you came up with an IoT device which can tell you what you are eating. Does it have any bad chemical in it? Does it have any ingredient which can cause cancer, for example, or which can cause neural disorders? I'll give you examples for that from real life, practical experience which we had, and which will tell you how it can be addressed using IoT. And at the bottom, you see wearable imaging. One of the earlier work we did on wearable imaging, my student Abhishek Basak was wearing a vest with embedded ultrasound imaging devices. And that's probably the first instance of wearable imaging. Since then, there are a number of researchers, number of companies are working on wearable imaging devices, but this was one of the early instances which I know of on developing wearable imaging device. We're also doing a lot in terms of education and training, because if you think about IoT, it's a broad area and students need to be trained on the core technology as well as the prospect of IoT, the changes IoT can bring in. So we are developing courses in terms of helping students learn these aspects. And we have also a scholarship program here. We got about $5 million funding from National Science Foundation to create a scholarship on security of these smart and connected systems, particularly focusing on the security of the hardware. And then we also are developing a new curriculum, which we call Hacking for Credit, where an IoT system like a smart light bulb or smart fan or smart toaster can be designed by the students. And you see some examples here. This course is being offered in the University of Florida for the last 5 years. And a number of students are taking this course. We developed a custom kit from the scratch, which can help students learn pretty much every aspect of IoT hardware security. And the way they do that is that they build an IoT system themselves, right? As I said, it can be a smart bulb or smart toaster or smart lock, things like that. They build something like it, and then they try to figure out the security issues in that smart device, and then they challenge each other in terms of hacking that particular smart device. They also implement different types of countermeasures or protection into it, and then they see if that protection is enough in protecting the IoT device. We also have some interesting curriculum development projects going on in the Institute. Pablo Antolenko, who is the director of the Educational Neuroscience Lab in College of Education, he and my students are developing EEG and other devices for teaching kids or elementary students different aspects of cryptography and cybersecurity. We also have an automotive simulator. This is a $300,000 equipment which we have in our lab called RDS 1000, which will allow you to drive an autonomous vehicle, and you can program it in the way you want. So this doesn't physically move, but it has everything else. It has the sensors which you can integrate, the actual hardware sensors, and you can create different driving conditions, different traffic conditions, weather conditions, and so that you can emulate autonomous driving, figure out different issues, security issues, safety issues, and come up with solutions for them. So really, really powerful environment for doing research on autonomous vehicles. Of course, if you think about IoT, a significant aspect of IoT is applied, because you are really applying the technology to solve real-life problems. In that context, we work with industry. There are a lot of active partnerships with more than 20 companies going on in terms of multiple projects. We also have a lot of partnerships with federal agencies. So with that, let me talk about IoT. What is IoT? I think all of you know about that. This is a very common term by now, because there are more than 20 billion connected devices at this point on the face of the earth. So to me, the IoT or Internet of Things is the traditional embedded systems which are designed and optimized for specific use cases with tight hardware-software integration, right? So for example, smart camera, smart MP3 player, or things like that. So what do? You take that traditional embedded systems and add generous amount of connectivity. And this connectivity is across devices as well as with the internet and with the cloud. So if you add that, it's kind of a recipe. So you take the embedded system, you add connectivity, you also include smartness in the form of machine learning, for an example, right? Or different types of AI or artificial intelligence technology. You add smartness to it so that it can potentially learn from the usage scenarios, learn from the environment, or it can take autonomous decisions, right? So these are the features of smartness. You add that, and then you add interoperability, which means that the device should be able to talk to other device. The device should be able to talk to human users in a seamless manner. If you do that, then you get IoT. Okay, so this is a very simple recipe of creating IoT in our opinion. And if you do that, then you have an IoT. Okay, because IoT is broad. It's good to know what is IoT and what is not, and that's why we came up with that definition. Yeah, and again, if you think about IoT from the architecture side of IoT, as you probably know, there are 4 layers. The first layer, which is the bottommost layer, it's called things layer. This is the layer where you have these edge devices or smart connected endpoint devices like your thermostat, like your RFID sensor, like your smart lock. So all of these are there at the bottommost layer, which are connected among themselves using, let's say, a gateway. For example, if you have a lot of smart devices in your home, you have a residential gateway to connect them or hub to connect them. And then they are connected to the internet, to the cloud. So that's the cloud is the third layer, which is basically implemented by a connected set of servers, and that provides you shared storage, shared computing resources, and finally, in the level of abstraction, we have applications running in cloud as well as applications running in the edge devices. So these are the 4 layers in the IoT architecture. And interestingly, if you look at these layers, you basically have a lot of room for innovation in each of these layers. Okay, so this whole thing is IoT, but you can break IoT into 4 layers, and then you can try to innovate in each of these layers. There are a lot of interesting research problems to deal with at each of these layers. So I will not go into all of them, but this is just for you to look at. This is not all, but just want to show you that if you are an IoT researcher, if you're interested to contribute in the field of IoT, there are a lot of room for innovation in terms of developing technology at each layer of the IoT architecture. So before I talk about applications, I quickly talk about security, because security is such an important thing for IoT. These are smart connected devices, and without making them secure, they may not be usable. If you think about security of anything, there are basically 3 things, right? You have assets, which are the valuable things you want to protect. You have attacks, where you're trying to see how a potential attacker can break into your let's say home or break into your car and then take hold of these assets, right? So that's the attacks. And if it's computer, then you know what are the attacks. Somebody can really compromise your computer system and ask for ransoms, or create something called denial of service, which means that to make it stop working in the manner it should work. And then the last part of security is that once you know the assets and attacks, you need to know how to protect the assets against the attacks. Okay, so there are 3 things you have to understand when you talk about security of any particular object or in any context. And at the bottom, we have the corresponding Chinese equivalent of these 3 things. I give a talk in some university in China, and that's why I put them. It looks like, because they are symbolic, right? So there is some correlation between these terms and the corresponding symbols. Now you may ask, what is new about IoT security? Because computer security is there for a long, long time. There has been tremendous amount of work in this field. Anything new? The answer is yes, there are a lot of new problems, new challenges in IoT security. Again, it will take probably a whole lecture to talk about these problems. I wanted to focus on the cool applications it can do, so that's why I would really cut it short in terms of security. But if you're interested, please be in touch with me, and I'll be happy to share more details on IoT security. And just to give you a flavor on what are the new challenges in IoT security, I'll just touch upon a few of them. One of the challenges in IoT security is that these devices interact with the physical world, interact with you on a daily basis. If you have a smart toaster, which was just recently hacked by a hobbyist hacker, and there is a news on that in Gizmodo and other websites. So they found that if you take a smart toaster, it really allows you to control the toaster from your cell phone and from remotely program it as in the way you want. Or a smart coffee maker, the same thing, it's the same way you can do that. But the problem is that because it interacts with the physical world, let's say in a coffee maker or toaster, you have a burner, right, which heats up. And if somebody can compromises the burner, it can potentially go over a specific threshold temperature and it can burn your house, potentially. Similarly, if you have a smart connected vehicle, and if you can compromise that, it can lead to accidents, right? So, because it interacts with physical world, security issues can convert into safety issues, and that's a big thing. That's kind of new for IoT. They have long, complex life cycles. I gave you the example of smart refrigerator and smart car. These devices will survive 30 years or 20 years in the field. During that time, the attackers become smarter and they come up with new attacks. So you have to have a mechanism to make sure that the security solutions you put on those devices become relevant, right? There are many other issues which we can go through and talk about. But one thing I have to tell you is that if you think about IoT security, it requires holistic view of security, or it requires a solution which can span across the entire IoT architecture, not just one level. If you can make one device secure, that's not enough, because it may be connected to another device, which is the weakest link for an attacker. An attacker will try to compromise that link to compromise any device which is connected to it. So that's why it requires a holistic view, and that means it requires significant rethinking. So it's a huge amount of work going on, but there are a lot of unsolved problems in IoT security. A couple of them I'll quickly give you a flavor, and I will see if you have any question about that. As I mentioned, these devices many times remain in the field for a long time, 20, 30 years. If it's a military IoT, it can be 40 years in the field. So we came up with an idea of hardware patch. It was published in IEEE Spectrum a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. And the idea here is that if you have hardware inside your device, which you have, like the smart thermostat, if you open it, you will see a printed circuit board, and it has number of components like processors and FPGAs and other things. And this is the hardware, right? And this hardware is typically not patchable. You can only patch or fix the software. It turns out that there are a lot of security issues, security solutions implemented in the hardware. Now, if your hardware is not patchable, what you can do to fix a security problem is very limited, because then you have to rely on what the software can do, and software cannot do everything. Actually, it can do only very limited things, right? So if your hardware has a security bug, and if you find that out, and it cannot be fixed by just changing the software, and there are many cases like that, then you have to throw the hardware away, right? Or throw the device away. So you came up with a very interesting concept of patchable hardware. So if you're interested, you can read our IEEE Spectrum article. The idea here is that you can come up with a configurable fabric inside your system on chip, which can be upgraded on demand in a secure way. And I can talk about a lot more details on that. That was funded by Semiconductor Research Corporation, and it was very well received by the community. And we have examples, we have tools to do that. So that's the hardware patch. We also came up with a solution for physical tampering in the field. I think some of you know about the mod chip attack. In this particular attack, what they do, they take, let's say, a gaming console like Microsoft Xbox or Sony PlayStation, or a cable TV box or things like that. Many IoT devices are very much vulnerable. A few years ago, there was a military drone from US which was captured by one of the enemy countries, and then they took it apart and they reverse engineered the entire thing. So this is called physical attacks. Physical attacks means the attacker is trying to physically tamper the printed circuit board. And this is a really emerging, powerful attack in the IoT domain. We came up with a solution to detect and protect against physical attacks. Solution is pretty simple. It tries to come up with a unique ID or fingerprint for the whole printed circuit board. And this ID is created by taking the signature from all major components. And these signatures are unclonable. And now this device keeps sending the unclonable signature to a verifier. When the verifier sees there is a problem, the signature is not matching, the verifier can disable the device. So this is called remote authentication of IoT, and this is definitely an emerging field of research. We have tried to create such a field with some preliminary work, and I believe there is a growing importance for such remote monitoring and remote protection of IoT against physical attacks. IoT can deal with safety, and again, when it comes to safety, the most important thing that we should probably look at right now is dealing with the pandemic caused by COVID-19 disease. India is being hit hard by COVID-19. US is still dealing with that problem. It has upended our lives. To deal with the problem, we try to come up with a series of smart connected devices which can monitor, detect, and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. So I'm not going to all of them in details. I'll focus on one of them and spend some time on that. But I have a very short video which was created by University of Florida Media. It's also there in the YouTube. Let me go to full screen.
Sir, is there any audio available for this video?
So you can hear some music, right? Can you hear some music or no?
No, sir. Actually, the audio, I guess it's not playing.
It shows me audio there. That's interesting. I don't know how to enable audio, but maybe, yeah.
Okay, sir. You can share the link with us later.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Deboshi, what happened?
So I don't know. Like I guess sir just disconnected himself like while stopping the screen. I mailed him.
Okay.
I mailed him multiple times, but it's not replying.
Uh-huh. Okay. Where is he now?
So he is in
Actually.
USA actually. I cannot call also.
Oh, so he is talking from States.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Sir, what to do? Actually, it's not replying.
Hello, Deboshi.
Ah, yes, sir.
Uh, so, any information?
No, sir, he's not replying. I mailed him. Actually, I don't have the contact number. I mailed him and I'm also calling him in the Hangout. He's not replying again.
Okay. Let us continue to wait. I think he is going to bring something for us. Maybe that's why he has.
Ah, yes, sir, we're waiting.
Okay, sorry about that. So, where did we leave, Devarsi?
Yes, sir. Actually, I was trying to connect with you somehow, sir. We are
Okay,
almost
sorry about
completing.
that. I probably have
Yeah,
left
you
my
can
phone.
just share the slide, sir.
Yeah, I'll do that. So, do you remember how much I covered?
Yes, yes, sir. If you just show the slide, I can tell.
Okay, so let me show you the slides. So let me share my screen just a second.
Sir, actually, you just demonstrate one video from your group. So once the video was played, then suddenly you got disconnected.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. So what I'll do, I'll spend maybe another 15 minutes and I'll delay the other meeting so that I can quickly talk about few more important things.
Yes,
Sorry
sir.
about
Yes, sir.
that. Okay. Maybe the
Actually,
video
it's
is
okay.
not well supported by
Okay.
this meeting apps. Okay, so probably this was the slide where I stopped, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, no problem. Okay, so basically talked about COVID solutions. Now let's talk about another very cool IoT solution for dealing with fake medicines. And as you know, in India, fake medicine is a big problem. If you go to street of India, people have seen that 1 out of 10 or more medicines are fake. They probably do not have the right ingredients, or they do not have enough active ingredients, or sometimes they have completely different ingredients. Like many medicines from India, which are fake, they may have potato starch or rice starch in terms of in place of having the active ingredient. So we came up with a solution to deal with the problem, but just to give you how big this problem is, so 10 to 30% of the medicines you buy in developing markets like India, Bangladesh, Africa, and more than 50% from online, particularly the websites which conceal their physical location. You do not know where these medicines are coming from, but they give you attractive prices, right? More than 50% of those are fake. The global market for fake medicine is 75 to 200 billion US dollar every year. And it's not only medicine, it also affects the nutritional supplements like vitamins or energy booster, things which can help you to lose weight or gain weight. 50% of Americans use some sorts of supplements. These are not well regulated by FDA here, and these are very, very susceptible to fraud. And they are. According to our experiments, we have seen a lot of unacceptable ingredients like caffeine in a very high amount in these supplements. So we came up with a solution called NQR solution, nuclear quadruple resonance solution. And in this solution, we developed an IoT device which can be connected to your cell phone, and it can detect the chemical composition of the food or supplement or nutritional or medicine in a non-invasive manner. So just have to give you a personal experience I had. Last year I was visiting some remote parts of India, and I was waiting for a bus, and then I saw an elderly lady soaking the vegetables into blue water. And I asked her out of curiosity, what is this water? She said, this is called meal. So I figured this is actually copper sulfate, which is, as you know, a very toxic, sometimes neurotoxic chemical, but they regularly put those vegetables to make them look fresher, look greener, and potentially increase their shelf life. So fish, for example, particularly the ones which you receive from other states in West Bengal, they come soaked in formaldehyde, which is again a very toxic substance. So you came up with a solution, portable solution, which can detect these chemicals. Not only it can detect, it can tell you how much of that chemical is present in food supplemented medicines. A very enabling solution with an article in IEEE Spectrum, which got published last year. You can look at that. And also had a cover story in IEEE Consumer Electronics magazine. So that's one thing that can that can lead to enabling solution to make your life safe. There's another thing which we came up with is called context-aware speed bump. In this case, as you know, there are a lot of speed bumps on the road, but we wanted to come up with a smart speed bump which can increase its height or width, and at the same time it can completely vanish when it's not needed. So if you have an approaching car at a high speed, then you can increase the height gradually to reduce the speed of the car so that pedestrians which are crossing the, let's say, zebra crossing or intersection, they are not killed by these cars. You know, in terms of accidents, road accidents, pedestrian deaths caused by these vehicles is the most significant number of accidents which are happening in US and other countries, of course in India. In the state of Florida where I live, this is it's the number one in terms of pedestrian deaths caused by moving vehicles. So such a smart pump can help to reduce or significantly mitigate deaths caused by moving vehicles, pedestrian deaths caused by moving vehicles. At the same time, these smart connected speed bumps can help effectively measure the speeds of moving vehicles, reduce congestion, and at the same time, it can also help us to show holographic display in front of you, particularly if it's autonomous vehicle and you are not driving, the car is driving itself. The speed bumps can show you some meaningful information like nearby restaurants of your choice, like the traffic accident which is probably delaying your journey, going to delay your journey. So all these meaningful information can be displayed by a smart speed bump. This is a patent pending work, and then a lot of interesting applications of this technology is happening right now. Florida Highway Patrol is very interested to explore these solutions. So we'll see what happens, but this is just one use of IoT in making our life safer. In terms of sustainability, this is a very cool application of IoT which we came up with. And this is for electric vehicle. You know, that's the future of vehicles. In India, there's a huge push by Modi government in terms of adoption of electric vehicle. You know, Tata is developing a low-cost electric vehicle, and there are many other efforts like that. In terms of the mass adoption of electric vehicle, most important problems are, number one, the battery life is not good enough. It can only run for, let's say, a few hundred miles max. Number two is that because of the battery, big battery, the weight and cost is quite significant. And if you can reduce the battery size and capacity, then the weight and cost can significantly go down. So to deal with the problem, we came up with the idea of car-to-car charging, and it's inspired by on-the-air refueling of aeroplanes. You probably have seen YouTube videos where an aeroplane can be refueled in the air while they are flying. So this is the idea which we came up with. Again, it's a patent pending idea, a lot of work going on. Multiple companies are interested. In this case, a moving vehicle can charge another moving vehicle. Even a drone, as you know, drones are being used for many applications like environmental monitoring, package delivery, and other things. A moving drone can come down to an electric vehicle for recharging itself. And we have a nice demo for that. We're not going into details about it, but this is a very promising technology. And there is a nice article in IEEE Spectrum that details the technologies. If you're interested, you can look at that. There's a paper which got published in IEEE Vehicle Technology Conference with a lot of interesting results to come up with. So that's for car-to-car charging. In the final slide talks about IoT for environment. We are developing distributed sensing solutions to monitor air quality and water quality, and also try to do some mitigation of that so that the air quality can be improved. As you know, in many places in India, the air quality is below the livable range, right? And this solution enabled by IoT can help mankind to deal with these problems. And we'll talk about, we can talk more about that, but this is a very powerful area of solutions which you are developing in terms of creating a map of air quality or water quality. At the same time, we are developing mitigation solutions. So, because we do not have time, we'll quickly end the talk here. This is the last slide. So, the summary here is that IoT drives innovation. There are a lot to develop in terms of addressing fundamental challenges in IoT technology. And also, as you know, IoT is convergence of three major technology areas: artificial intelligence, sensing, and communication. If you converge them well, you can come up with really enabling solutions in IoT. And if you do that, then you can solve a lot of global problems. But you have to address some of the dark sides of IoT, like the security issues I mentioned, like the safety issues I mentioned. If you can address those, then you can have IoT solutions that can lead to that can change the world. So it's exciting time for IoT research. I would really encourage all of you to contribute to this really promising area. If you need to learn more about specific aspects of it, I'll be happy to provide more information. With that, thanks a lot. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you for the talk. We have a few questions in the chat box. We can quickly take that. The first
Okay.
question is asked by Ms. Sricheta Parui, and she's asking that so IoT only means that it deals with the trustworthy data that can be used to build big data applications, and trustworthy data can only be associated from protected devices. So, but my concern is what is my concern is about the fact that will criminal or hackers not necessarily seek access to data stores for monetary gain? So how to deal with this?
Oh, that's a very, very good question, very powerful question. So this is an IoT security and assurance problem, and this is, I would say, an unsolved problem. There are a lot of interesting problems there. In terms of making sure that the data you are having from IoT devices, particularly edge devices, secure and trustworthy, there are some interesting work going on, including some in our groups. So one of the solutions we are looking at is that you can look at the nature of the data, and if you can figure out some anomaly in the data, and AI can help quite a bit in terms of figuring out if the data you are receiving from your sensors are anomalous or not. So sensor security is a big topic, and this is a new topic. People are looking into that problem right now, and there are a lot of interesting solutions coming out, but I would say that this is an unsolved problem. If you're interested to contribute in that topic, we can talk more.
Yeah. Hello. Yes.
Yeah, go
Yes.
ahead. Thank you.
Yes. Another question is there like so can applications for IoT as well as augmented reality help companies respond to the changing conditions and complexities of the coronavirus pandemic?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So one of the problems, for example, we are looking at is that when a vaccine comes out, how do you make sure that how do you make sure you identify the most vulnerable population, and how do you create an order of vaccination? Like which set of people should get the vaccine first, and then maybe this sets next, because you need to, this is an optimization problem. You need to make sure you come up with optimal order in which you vaccinate these people so that you can minimize the impact of the spread, or you can contain the spread in the best possible manner. So to do that, IoT devices can provide significant help. If you, for example, have a wearable device, cell phones can track your location, can track whom you have been exposed, and that data, using interesting big data analytics solutions, can be interpreted by these companies who are responsible for giving vaccination to find the right order. This is just one application. The administration can also look at cell phone data. We are already doing it to figure out the different types of interactions people are having, to identify gatherings and all those things. So in many ways, IoT technology can be used to help with dealing the pandemic. These are just few examples, but the possibilities are endless. And as I mentioned, we are developing some solutions to deal with them. This is just tip of the iceberg. Lot more can be done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for this nice explanation. I can't see any other question in the chat box. So, any other question? If there, like, you can unmute yourself and directly ask. Otherwise, we'll conclude the event shortly.
I have a question from my side.
Yes, sir. Please.
I would like to go back to one of the early slides where you have
Sure.
shown the basic IoT architecture.
Okay, let me go there. Yes, Rajasi, go ahead.
Actually, if we look at here, between the interaction between the first two layers, that is the things and the network.
Correct.
The
Yeah.
things are the physical world. And then on, whatever we have is the cyber portion.
Correct.
The electronic portion. Now, the time scale at which the things operate at the physical world and the time scale at which they operate in the electronic part, they typically tend to be very different. So does it create any potential problem when we try to implement these things?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. One of the major problems for IoT today is that how it interacts with its human users, right? Particularly if you look at industrial IoT, think about a manufacturing plant where IoT is being used to sense the conditions of equipment, the location of equipment, and the people who are interacting with them, they have to interact with those devices. The time scale definitely is very important because the device has to take into account the asynchronous occasional interaction with the user and make sure it's always ready to respond to the user in the right way. So user interaction is a big thing in IoT design, not only in the IoT design, in IoT validation also. Because when you develop an IoT device, you have to design in a way that you take into account the user interactions and interactions with the physical world. But then you manufacture it, you have to validate that it's meeting all the functional specification, it's meeting all the security specifications, safety specifications. So that's a huge problem. If you ask me, IoT validation is a more difficult problem to solve than IoT design because you can design something by following a spec and then following manufacturing process guidelines, but then you have to make sure that the device that goes to the field meets all these requirements with proper user interaction. Particularly if you have AI unit which learns from user interaction, you have to make sure that it's learning in the proper way. It's not behaving in a way that causes harm, more harm than good. So that validation aspect is a very, very challenging problem, and it's an unsolved problem. Any contribution there can be very, very useful by the community. But it's a very fundamental question you ask. You see, this I would say is an open problem, an attractive area of research. But people are trying to do whatever they can.
Actually, I would also like to ask another related question. That is, recently I read a document authored by Professor Walid Saad of Virginia.
Okay.
So there they were talking about, this, apart from like in this kind of context, apart from like QoS and QoE, a new idea called QoPE, the quality of physical experience.
Yeah.
That is the mechanical world that is coupled with this. In terms of that, how the performance is coming in. Is there any work done in this domain by any group anywhere in States or Canada or Japan or in Europe? Anywhere, or in Israel maybe, that who are working closely on that issue.
I can look into
Trying
that.
to develop benchmarks for that, with proper theoretical foundation and everything. and then coming up with something that is actually useful. I mean,
Yeah.
not just a theory.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a very difficult problem, as I mentioned. Quantifying the quality of physical interaction is a very difficult metric in the first place. And once you quantify, then optimizing and validating your system to meet that metric is another challenge, right? So I would suggest that, let's say, this particular paper where they talk about the measure of quality of human experience, let's take that as a metric and let's see what we can do at the IoT system design level and IoT system validation level to meet that metric. So that can be a very interesting research problem. And again, if you can solve that problem, that will be a great contribution to the field. I will see if there are more work in this area, but there's not much to my understanding. There are probably very few. Very, very good question. I see this is an important area.
And Professor Bhunia, I have another professional question. That is,
Sure.
I have seen that the name of Professor Thai included in your group, like he's the deputy director or something.
Correct,
Uh,
correct. Yeah.
so are those people who deals more with like optimization type of things, like Professor Pardalos and others, more senior people, are they
Mhm.
also involved in this endeavor?
So the institute has, as I mentioned, 47 faculty members from different areas. IoT is pretty broad, right? It includes AI, sensing, communications, electronics, applications. So these 47 people represent different areas, and we do have people who work on different aspects of optimization and sensing and AI. And we have people for analytics area, right? Professor Sai is an expert in optimization and blockchain technology, and that has a significant role here in IoT. But we have a number of people from computer science department, including Professor Prabhat Mishra, who is also a graduate from IIT Kharagpur. He is leading the research program in the institute. These people are there who are helping on different aspects of IoT technology. But I have to admit that IoT is so broad that we are only focusing on very specific topics. We cannot really target everything, because if you do that,
Right.
then it will spread ourselves too thin. Right?
Thank you, sir. Thank you
So,
very much for, all the illuminating talk, and it's very informative and very it teaches us a lot of things. I do thank you
thank,
from my side.
no, I really appreciate it, Rajasri. It's my pleasure. And from yourself and the students and other professors who have joined, if there is any follow-up questions or comments, and if there is any willingness to collaborate on any specific topic, I'll be happy to continue the conversation.
Now, we will definitely be in touch with you.
Yeah, and
We
as
will
I
definitely
mentioned,
work with
Rajasri,
you. Yeah.
I visit IIT Kharagpur every year, and maybe next time I
Okay.
visit, I'll let you know, and I can meet in person.
Okay. Then it's
And
very
hopefully,
good that you, remember your motherland, and you stay, in touch with your motherland, and you want to contribute in the process. And you are helping us learning things, especially these young kids. This is very, very, very. This is so kind of you. This is indeed very good. I appreciate it. I do
thanks,
appreciate
Rajasri.
it.
Yeah, yeah. What I was saying is the next time I meet you, probably I do not have to put my mask on. Things would be better. Okay, so any other final question from the students, probably?
I guess that's all. I guess. Anyway, sir, we'll be like this session has been recorded and we'll be uploading it in our YouTube channel. So from there, if any
Okay,
students face any problem or something, they can mail you directly. Obviously,
sure.
your information details will be available there as well. So with
Okay.
this, I will conclude the session. So before that, very thank you to our speaker today, Professor Swarup sir, again from on the behalf of IEEE Computer Society Student Branch Chapter for such a nice talk with all the like latest applications of IoTs from the basic to the advanced level. And I also like to thank our faculty advisor, Professor Rajoshi Roy sir, for joining us and uh, flowing this event smoothly. So with this, I'd like to end this session today, and thanks to all the participants as well for your kind patience. So thank you.
Thanks, Devarshi.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
sir.
Thank you,
Actually,
Professor Bhunia.
sir, one,
Thank you.
yeah. Okay. আচ্ছা, মেম্বার্সরাই আছে তো খালি আপাতত। ওকে, আচ্ছা, মেম্বার্সরাই আছে তো খালি, বাকি সবাই লিভ করে গেছে। শোনা যাচ্ছে? হ্যালো, হ্যাঁ, সবাই আনমিউট করতে পারে।
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে।
হ্যাঁ, হ্যাঁ। হ্যাঁ, একটা মানে ছোট্ট ডিসকাশন, সেটা হচ্ছে যে একটা IEEE ডে একটা অর্গানাইজ করা হচ্ছে, ঠিক আছে? মানে মেল হয়তো অনেকেই পেয়েছে ওই APMTTS এর সাথে। তো ওদের সাথে একটু কোলাবোরেট করতে হবে, ঠিক আছে? ওরা চাইছে আমাদের যে ওয়েবমাস্টার পাহিলিদির সাথে কন্ট্যাক্ট করতে, বাট পাহিলিদি বোধহয় খুব ব্যস্ত আছে, আমি জানি না সময় দিতে পারবে কিনা। বাট কেউ যদি ফ্রি থাকো, মানে আমি বেসিক্যালি রেকমেন্ড করেছি হচ্ছে সামন্তকদা, ঐশ্বরিয়া আর সায়ন্তনীকে।
কি করতে হবে ওদের সাথে?
ওদের সাথে একটু কোলাবোরেট করতে হবে। ওরা যেটা বলতে চাইছে যে ওই ও সরি, রেকর্ডিংটা স্টপ করি আগে।